regards to our programs, one, we do concerts. So the one unique thing about us is anytime we've programmed a concert, we have only done concerts by Pan-African composers.
Oh,
So
okay.
like we have, and also we always wear native attire. That's one thing about like our brand. So we
Yeah.
just kind of promote that music wholeheartedly. Sometimes I've been to concerts where it'll be like, we'll play a symphony and then, in the beginning we'll play like this, no, it's the entire concert, beginning to end. So we really try and embody that in all the concerts we do. And also with publishing, this has been a very like long embarking. Our website launches next weekend. And while for some people it could be the first time hearing about this, it's been a 2 year process. It's been a 2 year process to get funding, to get yeses. And we were just kind of resilient. And the whole idea for the publishing platform is oftentimes with composers, due to like these payment gateway systems, like if you want to buy a piece from someone in Nigeria, if you don't have a Nigerian bank account or they don't have a US account, it's very hard. So that
Mm.
that accessibility for you and them is hard. So with our platform, and we want to keep growing the collection. But with the current pieces that we were able to afford to engrave, because Jesus, who knew engraving would be so expensive? But
Mm.
with the current pieces we have, you know, a musician like you now could go on the platform, see a potential work that you like. We have a couple vocal works, purchase it, and the nice thing is 70% of the sales goes to the composer. Our platform is designed to really benefit the composers. There are other publishing platforms that maybe it's like for profit, but for me, I'm really tired of that narrative where a composer in Africa, maybe because they don't have opportunity, will just send their music out for free, maybe on WhatsApp,
Oh, yeah.
because they're just looking for a chance. Well,
Mm.
no, I want you to have money because that
Yeah.
when I did some research, most of the composers that we kind of looked up to, like Akinuba, Fela Shawande, oftentimes those people had full-time jobs. It wasn't maybe like in parts of Europe where you could be a full-time composer. So, Akinuba, while he was a well-renowned composer, he also had to do some other stuff because at times, like with African composers, composition didn't pay the bills. And, barriers in that is because sometimes people just that value of paying for their works as opposed to just paying it for free. And I think we see now in the 21st century how we're trying to play more new music and
Mm.
old music you can just get on IMSLP. But the issue is realizing if you play music for 21st century, these people need to eat. These people need to
Exactly.
be
Mm.
compensated. So, and we just want to make sure like Africans are included in that. And we are trying to create a system where they can be financially compensated for their works.
Mm. Well, I must get you Uchi in contact with you because he is such a great composer, and it might be that he can also benefit from your platform.
Yeah, again, that's the idea. It's definitely a grind, but I like
Mm.
to.
So
I
it's
don't.
all over Africa. You basically focusing on Africa.
Yeah, like right now, some compositions that we have. we mostly have a collection right now of composers from West Africa, and then we have a couple from Brazil and Mexico, just because
Okay.
in regards to the African diaspora, there's a very deep connection between like Brazil and Africa. There's a pretty big Yoruba population.
Mm.
So, but our goal is to expand the collection to have more composers from like East Africa, South Africa, or like North Africa. So
And what's so wonderful about these composers is some of them, like you say, haven't had the music education, yet it comes from within. You know, it's something that they've developed through the years or of uh, you know, playing instruments or but and how much of the traditional African music do you think is it's important that we hear?
I think it's pretty important. Like I would say, we were actually just had a meeting yesterday because like some of the instrumentation that we do is not traditional. So in terms of how things are organized or like the music, I remember we did a piece we commissioned last year, Atoto Arere. It had this talking drum part, and it was a bit hard because one of the composers asked, how do you notate for talking drum? And we were all trying to figure it out because we didn't really
Okay.
know. We
Mm,
we wrote something down on paper, but essentially what happened was we found a talking drum master. He like looked at the music and it was like a reference point, but I kind of see it more as like, we had the classical musicians who were playing violin and the talking drum part on the score. I would say, think of it as like a jazz musician reading a chord. You have your chord progressions, but as long as you're doing something that sounds good, no one
mm,
cares. So I feel
yeah.
like that talking drum part, I feel like if someone who maybe was not a talking drum master played it, I would just say like, they can read it, but it's more of a reference. And I think that
Mm,
African authenticity, and we have the recording is listening to like someone like Mr. Ajide play, because they may be like, this is not exactly what's on the score, but it's all right because
yeah.
the idea of trying to notate, the idea of notation is a more Western
Mm.
thing. So there's some things that is, I think within like African percussion, it's a bit hard to notate.
Mm.
So
But I've been speaking to quite a few African artists from Zambia, from Nigeria, and um, the thing is that it seems, and also in dance, I've been talking to dancers as well, that this African tradition, these dances, the music, everything is really the basis of what we now see as jazz music. You know, it's the origins were there in Africa. So and it seems to in the dance world as if some dancers now make sort of fusions between African dance and contemporary dance. So can you see
yeah.
that some things like that happen, that musicians start getting interested in these African music and African instruments?
Yeah, I definitely think so. As a classical musician, I don't know. Like if I just think about like the long-term future, like I grew up loving classical music. Like I've
Mm,
played Scheherazade, Dvorak, many symphonies, and oftentimes nowadays, me as a classical music lover, when I talk to some of um my friends who are African musicians, we kind of have this conversation where at times when you go to like sometimes symphony concerts and it's like new music concerts, for me as someone who studied classical music, I often don't find myself in the concert hall. And I keep asking myself, is it because like I don't get it? But then at times it's like the music, it just doesn't speak to me as maybe it did with like the romantic era music. And but the one thing that I find interesting about the music that we do, for the most case, most of it's very tonal. Atonal music for me usually is a miss. Sometimes it can be a hit, but typically it can be a miss. And for the average listener, like the popular listener who essentially they're the people who are funding, who are going to be the patrons potentially to go to these concerts, it doesn't resonate with them. It doesn't matter how well known the composer is, how fantastic the new commission is. If it doesn't resonate with the popular listener, it's going to be so hard to get them to the hall. And